Welcome to Study Session 10, Audit Challenges in Specialized Organizations. Introduction. Specialized audit covers the audit of various types of organizations, profit and non-profit, and the different types of industries in the business group. In some cases, there are auditing standards that take to. In some cases, there are auditing standards and guidelines on specific areas, whereas in other cases, the auditor has to rely on his knowledge of the general approach techniques and the peculiarity of the organization. This lecture summarizes some of the challenges involved in audit of non-conventional businesses. Objectives. At the end of this lecture, you should be able to describe the special audit requirements of many specialized businesses in Nigeria. General audit approach for specialized organizations. Specialized organizations that can be audited include businesses. Take two. Specialized organizations that can be audited include business and non-business organizations that are subject to specific statutory and regulatory requirements in relation to preparation and audit of their accounts. Such organizations include banks, insurance companies, primary mortgage institutions, charities, government ministries, and departments. The general audit approaches for these organizations are as follows. Setting up a permanent audit file. Permanent audit files contain records that do not change from time to time. Such records include a copy of the rules or regulations, constitution or other document governing the specific enterprise, for example, memorandum and articles of association for an incorporated entity, partnership deed or agreement in the case of a partnership. A copy of statutory material relating to the conduct of the organization, its accounts or its audit, for example. Companies and Allied Matters Act, CAMA, for specialist incorporated bodies. The engagement letter. A copy of the minutes of the meeting at which the appointment of the auditor was approved. Notes on the history of the organization, its background, the industry it belongs to, and its prospects. Notes on the internal structure of the organization, its locations, personnel, management, production systems, products, services, and so on. Copies of all past accounts, if any, with notes on accounting policies and significant ratios, together with any auditor's report and qualifications thereto. Copies of all prospectuses in respect of the organization, and a list of the organization's advisors, that is, bankers, solicitors, and so on. Planning of the audit. Taking into consideration and documenting the following. Any problems of accounting measurement which may affect the organization's accounts. The types of assets and liabilities which are likely to be found, and any particular problems which might arise in verifying their existence, ownership, valuation, and presentation in the organization's accounts. The types of revenue and expense which should be expected, and the particular problems which might arise in controlling and recording them. Any special problems that might arise in respect of any of the transactions of the organization. A likely area that we need attention is the handling of cash transactions, both receipts and payments. Consider any matter which might give rise to a greater than normal audit risk. In some organizations, these matters might be in relation to valuation of stock and work in progress, while in others, there might be cash receipts or ascertainment of asset quality by financial institutions. Audit of farmers' accounts. Audit of farmers vary according to the type of business organizations which are run, that is, sole proprietorship or company, the type or variety of products that the farm produces, as well as the extent of records being kept. Other features of farm accounts include crop rotation practice resulting from fallow crops and fallow periods, valuation of livestock, government subsidies if any, in respect of fertilizers and extension workers, valuation of crops and stores at the end of the financial year. Farmers usually operate as sole proprietors, in which case a lot of the records may not be kept at all. Therefore, the auditor may have to treat the farmer's accounts as those of a small business where he may be involved in converting incomplete records to complete records. This exercise involves having to prepare the trial balance and final accounts. On the other hand, if the farm is operated as a company, the provisions of CAMA are applicable, in which case the farmer will keep accounting records and prepare financial statements annually. The knowledge of columnar and departmental accounts is useful in respect of the variety of farm products that may exist, for example, crops, fruits, poultry, piggery, cattle, and fishery. Audit of professionals' businesses. Professional businesses include, for example, accountants, lawyers, doctors, engineers, pharmacists, and architects. Some professionals carry on businesses as sole practitioners, partnerships, and limited liability companies. It should, however, be noted, some professions are precluded either by law or professional code of conduct from being incorporated. Examples are firms of solicitors and accountants, as specified in sections 19 of CAMA. In carrying out the audit of professionals, the auditor will need to consider the type of business organizational setup, the code of conduct of the particular profession, and the statutory guidelines, if any, that may affect the profession. Audit of teaching hospital. In addition to dispensing drugs and medical services at a price to patients, which could have been an ordinary business concern, a teaching hospital as a complex organization carries out a lot of other activities and renders other specialized services to patients and the community, most of which are not for profit. It may also derive much of its income from diverse sources, some of which may be capital in nature, including government subventions, philanthropic organizations, donor organizations and individuals, research institutes, international agencies, and charities. Special funds may also be provided for research and specialist health activities such as AIDS, tuberculosis, or cancer. The revenue from the ordinary activities of a teaching hospital may include consultation, drugs, surgery, nursing care, bed fee, feeding, delivery charges, mortuary fees, sale of cards, laboratory tests, and blood infusion dialysis. Apart from analyzing the charges to a patient into the appropriate headings, there is also the problem of matching costs with related revenue, especially in cases where a patient's admission extends from one accounting year to another. Hence, where the teaching hospital has the policy of receiving advance payments from patients, there is always the problem of apportioning such advance payments to the different periods to which they relate. The auditor should therefore review the basis of the apportionment and carry out a recomputation of such accrued revenue in order to confirm its reasonableness and accuracy. There is also the problem of high incidence of bad debts for a hospital establishment, especially in cases of patients who die in the course of treatment. Audit of hotels. The revenue of a hotel establishment will include accommodation for rooms, meals served in restaurants, bar sales for beverages and tobacco, sale of snacks, laundry services, hire of conference halls, telephone, fax and internet services, room service, car hire services. The sources of revenue for hotels are diverse and of non-standard value. For instance, hotel rooms are of different classes, and restaurant meals are based on the specific orders by guests which are required to be costed by attendants and waiters who may not have any accounting knowledge. In order to carry out the audit of a large hotel establishment, the auditor should first identify all sources of revenue to the hotel and evaluate each in terms of control over the revenue generated. One major difficulty relating to the internal control of a hotel establishment is the unlimited hours of business. Just as in the case of a hospital, guests may arrive at odd hours in the night. In respect of restaurant services, auditors should ascertain the costing method for meals served and check the bills on a sample basis to the cash receipt books. The hire of conference halls should be vouched by reference to the related correspondence in order to ensure adequate billing and effective collection. The bar account should be verified by carrying out a physical stock check and overall test of the bar purchases and daily sales. Audit of a university. For the audit of a university, the auditor should consider the enabling legislation, the nature of its activities, the funding, the system of internal control, the accounting format, and reporting requirements. Universities in Nigeria are established by special acts of the National or State Assemblies with approval for the various programs by the National Universities Commission (NUC), a body also charged with the responsibility of funding and regulating activities of the universities. It will therefore be appropriate for the auditor to obtain copies of the act setting up the university and the NUC accreditation of its programs. On the first visit, the auditor should obtain a schedule of NUC subventions for comparison with the infrastructural developments. Audit of not-for-profit organizations. Not-for-profit organizations are characterized by contributions of significant amount of resources from resource providers who do not expect commensurate or proportionate pecuniary returns. These not-for-profit organizations include educational, social, scientific, literary, cultural, religious, sporting, charitable, voluntary, health, and welfare entities set up in different forms and sizes. Some not-for-profit organizations have their own enabling act, while some others are incorporated as companies limited by guarantee. The audit approach to be adopted for not-for-profit organizations requires some duty of care from the auditors. Each organization should be considered properly in order to identify, first and foremost, the structure of the organization. For example, is it a company, an incorporated trustee, or an association with only a constitution or rules and regulations? Whatever the structure or form, the auditor is required to understand it in detail with particular reference to any applicable accounting and auditing standards, principles, and guidelines. All the sources of funds should be carefully investigated so as to obtain evidence for their inclusion in the accounts. Some of the funds may be in the form of grants, some of which are meant for specific events, which, when they do not take place, will translate to a refund of the amounts to the donors. Audit of pension funds. The Pension Reform Act 2004 has relieved employers of the burden of managing pensions and transferred this responsibility to designated pension fund administrators (PFAs). The auditor should examine the agreement existing between employee and employer and ensure that the provisions have been fully carried out. Verify that proper control is exercised over the transactions of the fund, such as deductions from contributors' wages and the total contributions remitted to the PFA on a monthly basis. verify that the pension deductions agree with the provisions of the Pension Reform Act 2004. Audit of government agencies, parastatals, and departments. Government auditing can be divided into three major categories, namely, audit of the Treasury accounts as prepared by the Accountant General of the Federation, audit of ministries, departments, and agencies accounts, and audit of Take Two, and audit of accounts of parastatals. Apart from the provision of the 1999 Constitution, the Audit Act 1958 also provides that the Accountant General of the Federation should furnish the Auditor General of the Federation with the country's financial statements within 7 months after the close of each financial year. Federal parastatals or public sector enterprises are organizations set up by government for different reasons, most importantly to perform social tasks. Examples of this type in Nigeria include PHCN, NIPOST, NITO, Nigerian Railway Corporation, Federal Housing Authority, and Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation. Other types of parastatals are industrial core projects, which are capital-intensive enterprises established predominantly by government to produce basic inputs for downstream industries. These include refineries and petrochemical plants, fertilizer plants, steel plants, cement plants, and liquefied natural gas (LNG) plants. There are three types of public sector audit, which are regulatory audit or compliance audit. This is conducted with a view to ensuring that expenditure have been incurred on approved services and in accordance with the enabling statutory provisions and regulations governing the particular expenditure. An example of this type of exercise is the audit conducted on each product. Take Two. An example of this type of exercise is the audit conducted on each project or contract. Financial audit. This is one that is conducted in order to ensure that the accounting and financial control systems are efficient and cooperating properly, and that financial transactions are being correctly authorized and accounted for. This is the type of audit conducted on the Treasury accounts of the Federation from time to time. Value for money audit. This is concerned with whether governmental organizations are achieving the purpose for which programs are authorized and funds are made available, are doing so economically and efficiently, and are complying with applicable laws and regulations. Value for money is the concept that seeks the maximization of the use of scarce resources for the welfare of the public by ensuring that activities and programs are carried out at low cost and to high standard. In order to achieve this phenomenon, three elements are usually covered, and these are economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. Audit of computerized business. The transition from pen on paper technology to electronic environment has created obvious challenges for the auditor. First, there is the invisibility of data and processing. In other words, traditional paperwork in which the auditor can see and feel the printed marks evidencing transaction is now disappearing, as transactions are carried out online and in most cases real-time form. Secondly, there is also the radical change in the control structure, electronic controls replacing manual controls. For example, an auditor who opts to vouch the authenticity of a transaction carried out manually will generally look for the authorizing signatures in the paper evidencing the transactions. In an electronic processing environment, such authority is evidenced by the use of user identification codes and passwords, which are all invisible to the naked eye. The third challenge is that of speed of processing, which puts auditors on their toes. While an irregularity occurring in a manual environment has 50% chance of being tracked before it is consummated by the perpetrators, it is not often the case within electronic environment, as the perpetrators may be done with their acts before the auditors discover. Fourthly, IT dynamics always challenges the auditor's competence in the business place. Changes in the IT environment occur very frequently, such that the auditors are left continually catching up with the trends. Summary: in audit assignment of specialized organizations, auditors should obtain a copy of the rules or regulations, constitution or other document governing the specific enterprise, copy of any statutory material relating to the conduct of the organization, its accounts or its audit, notes on the history of the organization, its background, the industry it belongs to and its prospects, list of the organization's advisors, that is, bankers, solicitors, and so on, information about the types of transactions which are likely to be found, and any particular problems which might arise in verifying their existence, ownership, valuation, and presentation in the organization's accounts. This is the end of ECHO 414. Thank you.